Hi, everyone. My name is Maria Moore, and I am a candidate experience manager here at Root Insurance. I'm super excited to have the chance to speak with you all today and share a little more about what we're doing over here at Root, some of the exciting engineering challenges we're facing and embracing, and a little more about where we're going from here. I'll also wrap up the conversation by talking a bit about, how we do our work and how you can get involved if you're potentially interested in an open opportunities. So those are my main goals. Again, I'm a candidate experience manager at Root, so I focus on growing and scaling the engineering organization. I've been here since December of 2020, and it's been a really exciting journey. I've loved having the opportunity to work with engineering leadership, work with software engineers to scale in a meaningful way and to really help build out their teams. And so really thrilled I have the chance to talk with you all today about what that has meant to us. I think we have a really cool story of disrupting the insurance industry using technology. And yeah, I'm really happy that I can share a little bit about what that's meant to us with you all here today. So, to kind of just dive right in, I always like to start off by talking a bit more about our mission, and about a little bit of how we got here and why we got here. So, we unbreak things, and that can sound kind of silly. I think we fix things might, sound better, but fixing and unbreaking is different to us here at Root. Fixing would be temporary. We wanted to fundamentally change the way insurance is handled. So back in 2015, Root Insurance was first founded, and our founders were familiar with the insurance industry, familiar with all the ways that it was broken and, archaic in a lot of ways. And they said, hey, we can fix this. Using technology, using meaningful data, we can really unbreak a lot of what is broken. And again, make fundamental change in this industry that really no other players had tried to change in this way before. So, all that to say, our main mission here is to continue to unbreak and make insurance more fair and make things more equitable for people. That's how we started back in 2015. And I think, this next slide explains how we are going to unbreak. As I mentioned, we have a focus on technology when we're solving these exciting problems. We wanted to make sure that data and technology were at the forefront of how we approach, creating solutions. And a big differentiator for us in the way that we are going to go about this is using telematics. So, telematics is the big piece to our technology. It makes up our core product that I'll talk about in just a couple of slides here. But the main thing that I want to make sure I hit home with this is, taking a data and technology approach in the insurance space was not something that was done quite often. As I've mentioned a couple times already, it's an archaic industry and not super up to date. And so when we had the opportunity in 2015 to really unbreak an industry, come in and create from scratch an insurance company, we wanted to make sure that we were bringing things up to date and using data that makes sense. So I guess, what does all of this mean? I've said broken industry a million times already. I might say it a million times more. So I wanted to make sure I talked about, what exactly this meant to us. So we had this great idea. We're going to make a car insurance company from scratch. We're going to be tech forward in our approach. What are we going to start unbreaking? What's our first stab at that going to look like? And so we started by tackling the archaic car insurance industry. So Insurance actually became the nation's first licensed insurance carrier powered entirely by mobile. And so our view there was we're going to use technology to use telematics to track driving habits. And then we can base people's car insurance quotes on those habits and put less emphasis on the demographic data. Traditional car insurance companies really focus on demographics, age, zip code, gender, marital status, things like that to give you a quote for car insurance. And so, in our effort to make things more fair and make the quote make sense, we said we're going to make driving habits, as you can see in that slide there, the demographic to the right, the graphic to the right, I'm sorry. Um, we want driving habits to be weighed heavier than any other single demographic. And so that's what we've done, putting driving habits into that equation. And this really, I think, speaks to that unbreaking I talk about versus fixing. Fixing would have been putting a band aid on this, but this is redefining, this is breaking down and redefining what that pricing model is going to be. And the thing about this that's always interesting to me is insurance companies have known for a long time that this driving behavior data point is more predictive of likelihood of getting into an accident than any of these demographics. But really putting that into practice and executing is challenging. It's not an easy factor to put into the pricing model, but that's what we do here at Root. We like hard problems. We like solving things that aren't super straightforward and haven't been done before. So, I guess that brings me to my next point, which is hey, we know things are broken. We have an idea of how we want to fix it. We want to use technology, but what does that look like in practice? And what that looks like is our insurance product, our mobile application that we've built that you can see here in these slides. So this is basically the life cycle you will go through if you are interested in um, purchasing car insurance through Root. You download the app on your smartphone. You do a quick test drive. It's usually a couple of weeks long, and this is where we're gathering that driving data I talked about. We want to use your driving behavior to price. This is how we're going to get that driving behavior. So it's usually like a couple weeks long, and it's I'll actually dive into this, and I think the next slide or the slide after that, but um, we're able to tell like, are you the driver? Are you the passenger? Are you in a car, bus, train, etc. Where our technology is able to detect that, and so you're getting your driving score and your driving behavior truly is how you've been driving during that test drive for the few weeks. So once we have that, you're able to choose your plan, manage your plan, file a claim. So I think up until this point, I really have focused on our goal to make the pricing more fair, to put less emphasis on the demographics. But this also shows you how we are trying to bring things up to date. We know that a lot of folks are living on their phones now and living on their mobile apps. I don't think that's really a secret. And we wanted to make sure as we are embarking on this journey of, creating an insurance company, that we have that UI experience that folks are craving, that you're able to, in one application, do all of these things. Traditional auto insurance processes are, talking with an agent on the phone, taking a couple of days to actually purchase that quote and that insurance. But we are able to, again, streamline that and make it quicker within a couple of seconds. You can choose your plan, download it, sign up for it, you're done. So, that kind of instant gratification is something that we're really happy we're able to do through this mobile app. And I guess, probably at this point, what you might be thinking is okay, so you've made this great product. What's next? Where's the business going? And that is something I'm always excited to talk about as well. Because, yes, we have this main, insurance product. We're really proud of it and we'll continue to build upon it and work with it. But moving forward, we really want to see, how are we going to use this technology in other ways? How can we partner with other companies, with other places, in the car buying process, in the auto renters, home insurance? How can we use this technology to partner with other places? And we've been really excited that we're able to announce a partnership with Carvana pretty recently. And we're going to be the exclusive insurance provider through Carvana. And so that's a way that we have been able to, create a more seamless process for purchasing insurance after you've purchased your car, being able to embed right into their system. And that's the kind of work we want to continue to do. We want to continue to use our technology, be tech first, but what does that look like, in other parts of this process? And how do we continue to streamline, continue to enhance this user experience? And from an engineering perspective, I think that's really interesting. We started again with our mobile product, building this from scratch. The engineers that created this technology we're really building from the ground up, problem solving together. It's exciting challenges to kind of face there. And we're going to see more of the same moving forward. Yes, we have great work to start from. We have great groundwork with this mobile app, but we're going to have to now learn, how do we embed in other systems? How do we partner with these businesses? How does our technology fit into their equation? So that's going to be really exciting work that we can continue to be creative around. And I think is really going to differentiate us from a lot of technology jobs. I think on the surface, when people say like, oh, I'm a I'm an engineer at an insurance company. Doesn't spark a ton of excitement, but at root, you're making impactful changes. I talked about that pricing model. You're getting folks more fair prices for their car insurance, and you're working towards a goal that we've maybe never seen before in terms of partnering with these other organizations. This is exciting work and it's impactful work, and it's what kind of gets us up every morning and excited to come to work, getting to really work towards these goals and get creative in how we do it. So I definitely wanted to just briefly touch on what I mean when I keep saying driving habits, driving habits. You might be saying, well, what are you tracking? What does that mean? So we're actually able to use the sensors on your smartphone to gather some of this information. We'll never sell your personalized data. We're really using it to give you that fair price. So some of the stuff we're looking at is, the smooth braking. Are you driving during safe hours? The focus driving. Are you texting while driving? All of these things are pieces that we're looking at when we're going to give you that driving score that goes into your pricing model. So don't want to spend too much time on this, but did want to mention, what that means. The Drop the Score campaign is something we're super passionate about here, so I would have been remiss not to mention it in my presentation today. So, as I've talked about, making insurance more fair and advocating for that customer is so important to us here at Root. And so we started chipping away by adding that driving score into the equation. But something that we want to work on next in terms of our movement towards fairness is dropping credit score from that pricing equation altogether. We are committed to doing that in our pricing model. Relying on credit scores can really disproportionately harm certain groups of people and people in certain situations. If you have outstanding old medical bills, default on student loans, if you're an immigrant, these things can all um, affect your credit score, which in turn is affecting what you pay for auto insurance. And if you can see there from some of the data we collected from a consumer survey, most folks don't think that's fair, and I tend to agree. Most folks don't even realize that was part of their insurance. And so, this is really something that we want to address and take out of our pricing model. It's already a small part. We want to get rid of it altogether, really to promote fairness. So, I think this speaks to an underlying commitment to fairness in everything we do. We're not just going to talk the talk, we're going to walk the walk. So yes, we made some great progress with adding the driving score, but there's still work to be done, and we're not going to shy away from that, and we're going to embrace it and find ways to continue to promote fairness in insurance. So certainly wanted to talk about drop the score in this presentation. Okay. So kind of hard shift, but I want to talk a bit about growth at Root. It's been a huge theme in our company. We've scaled really quickly. I have a slide and a couple of slides that'll talk about what that's meant for personnel and technology. But in terms of market, this is not easy to get our car insurance, our insurance model into all of these different markets. Everything is so regulated state to state, and this really speaks to how groundbreaking our model is. It's not something that we can just flip a switch and offer nationwide. We have to be really thoughtful about how we get into the states and work with the states in terms of their regulations. So this speaks to our growth. We're super excited to see this much orange on the map. We want to see orange across the board at some point. But for now, this is really great growth for us. And in terms of engineering and technology, we have teams that are actually focused on market expansion specifically. How are we going to expand to these markets with the regulations? How are we going to handle the volume? We've learned that when we hit a new market, or really popular. So what does that look like for the volume and how people are using our app? So this speaks to how we've grown, and we're really proud of it, and also speaks to some of the exciting work that our engineering teams get to work on. So I said I would talk a bit about growth in terms of personnel and applications as well. So definitely wanted to share this slide. These are some stats from back in 2018. We had 78 employees. So, under 100 employees at the time. Our engineering team was divided up into 7 engineers. And then there's some stats about our Rails backend and our mobile client. So as you can see, not a huge scale, but this really the next slide is what I want to focus on, which is where we're at today. And by today, I mean July, but I wasn't able to gather the data from October, but this is pretty relevant. This is pretty up to date to where we're at now. I mean, we weren't even at 100 employees in 2018. Now we're at 1450 total. We divide into small engineering teams. So you'll see there we have 34 separate teams for our 212 software engineers. Um, and there's some info on our backend and our mobile clients. So really what I want to show here is we've scaled rapidly. It's been immense growth. As I mentioned, it's a huge theme in our company and we're proud of it. And it's been really fun to embrace these challenges that have come with scaling like that. However, it's also comes with some engineering challenges that we need to overcome, thinking about how do we work at this scale versus being much smaller in 2018. That's quick growth. What does that look like? What processes do we need to put in place? Do we need to relook at how we do things? So that's all different thoughts on our engineers minds. We are really a totally different company than we were just 3 years ago. So that's some of the stuff that we're currently working on. Okay, so I have talked a lot about our business, a lot about our product, and a lot about technology, which is all really exciting. But I think I definitely need to speak to how we're doing all this, the culture and the mindset behind how we work. So I have a couple of, different themes that tend to be reasons people love working at Root, and what I hear from folks when I'm talking to them on interviews about why they're interested in Root and what keeps them at Root. These come into play. And I actually want to talk about people first. I know it's the last one there, but it's if you ask a Root employee, most of the time they'll say the people I get to work with is what really keeps me at Root and keeps me excited. We do really meaningful work, as I was talking about earlier. It might not sound on the surface like, oh, an insurance company, okay. But as I've dug into it a little bit today, I think you can see, the work we do has impact. It's really meaningful. And everyone here is super excited about that. Our managers lead, from a caring space about our growth and about the business. So we come to Root because the challenges are hard and the people are ready to solve them and excited. So I wanted to talk about that first because the people here are really what keep us here. And as we continue to grow and expand, I'm always excited to talk to new people who are on the same page. They want to solve those hard problems. They care about making change in this industry. And then the other one's autonomy and collaboration. We believe that we hire awesome people who know their stuff. And so we don't put a ton of strict process around how you have to do things. You have a lot of autonomy in your role. And I think that helps to that impact piece as well. You really feel like you can do your job the way you see fit. Impact, I think I've talked about that a lot too. We're changing an industry. We're using technology to bring things up to date, to make things more fair. And that's impacting people's lives in major ways. So you can feel really good about the work that you're working on here. In collaboration, we believe that not one person has all the answers, and we're better when we work together. So we really foster an environment of, gently pushing back on each other and questioning the norm. How we got here as a company was questioning the norm of insurance, questioning that pricing model. And so we really feel like we need to foster that internally as well. So we always foster a feedback loop of, tell me how I'm doing, I'll tell you how you're doing. Let's make sure that we're working together towards these goals. So I definitely wanted to make sure I spoke a little bit about engineering at Root and how what it looks like, I guess, to be an engineer here and to work on our teams. So we operate, as I mentioned earlier, in smaller teams, even given our significant growth. Our teams are smaller, they're given ownership over projects and results. We know that we're here today because of the hard work of the people that built the initial product, the hard people that really got us off the ground, hardworking people that got us off the ground. And so we care immensely about the people that we add to our teams. In terms of how our engineering teams work, we follow agile methodologies. So we really care about cross team collaboration when we're following those methodologies. So, working directly with the stakeholders, our engineers are oftentimes collaborating with UI and UX, with product, with data science, whoever it might be. But at the end of the day, we believe that our engineers will build the best product and when they're able to contribute to the business results and they're able to understand the piece of the puzzle and how there's a strategic goal behind what they're doing. So we definitely, to that collaboration piece I just mentioned, we really care about ensuring that our engineers have all the context they need and that they have a seat at the table in those business conversations as well. In terms of how we work and how we build, we follow 1 week iterations. So we'll kick things off with a weekly kickoff. We do daily stand-ups from there. Our product team will set roadmaps quarterly and objectives quarterly. And actually, as we wrap up the quarter and plan for the next, we'll set aside 3 days for hack days, which our teams really love. It's actually an opportunity for the engineering teams to explore new technologies, to hone and build upon skills, and really work on problems that they choose entirely. It doesn't have to be directly related to the work they do every day. So again, that creative problem solving is really important to us, and so we want to make sure that we're giving folks the space to utilize those skills as well. We release weekly for our mobile apps, our backend twice daily. In terms of our technologies, we build our backend in Rails, which I think is no surprise. It's mostly an API for our mobile clients. We have some web views as well for internal admin dashboards. And then the mobile apps, I think I've already mentioned this, in React Native. So um, that's a little bit, very short snippet of how we work and the kinds of things we value and what has worked well for us here. I've listed our open roles here because we are hiring for these roles. We have a bunch of different roles open across the different engineering teams. And if anything I've said is even remotely interesting to you, I would love to consider you for one of these positions. I would love to just connect with you and talk more about engineering at Root, talk more about Root in general. But we are hiring for engineering managers, staff software engineers, and senior software engineers. A little bit about how those all are different. Engineering managers at Root are leading those teams. So, as I mentioned, smaller teams, like 6 to 7 engineers per team. The engineering managers are really steering the ship and taking on that big leadership role. Our engineering managers also have the opportunity to be pretty technical. So they do take on bits of the coding of the job and some of that individual contributor work, as well as getting to be leaders. So I know I talked to lots of engineers that are like, hey, I'm interested in leadership, but I'm not quite ready to step away from the code entirely. And our engineering managers don't have to. You're able to do a little bit of both of those things in our role, which people find very rewarding. And then the staff and seniors, staff is, our highest level individual contributor engineers. So really seasoned engineers that know their stuff, and full stack engineers are what we hire. So the cool thing is you don't have to have that Rails background. It's great if you do, but we really hire from all different tech backgrounds for both staff, senior. We're really just looking for strong full stack engineers who love problem solving and are excited by our mission, excited by the opportunity to help us upon some of those new business ventures that I've talked about. So yeah, engineering managers are our leaders, and then the staff and seniors are very technical, with also some opportunity to lead different projects, with also some opportunity to mentor. We have some junior and mid-level folks on all of our teams, so the staff and seniors have the cool opportunity to mentor those folks, help them in their career, onboard new people. So that's some of the more like leadership pieces that those two roles can take on. And that's all I had for you all today. Thank you so much for giving me some of your time. I hope you enjoyed learning just a little bit about Root, kind of a quick history and a quick look at where we're going. Again, if anyone wants to learn any more about anything I've talked about today, I am always more than happy to chat. So I have my email there, I have my LinkedIn. I also linked our engineering site, which I had on all of our slides, but that gives you even more info if you're interested in learning more. But yeah, thank you all so much. I really enjoyed speaking with you today.